The information contained on this podcast has been provided as general advice only. You should, before you make any decision regarding any information, strategies, or products mentioned on this podcast, consult your own financial advisor. Now enjoy the show.
Yeah.
But some people in their lease will have a make good clause,
yeah.
which means you need to get it back to the way you found it.
Which, and I'm just thinking about this venue, to make good here.
It would cost more than what it
I was going to
costs to
say,
build.
it's just ridiculous. It's
Millions.
Yeah. It'd be
Millions.
way too much money to
It's
actually
before
think
you
about.
start talking about grease traps or
Yeah.
like, fuck. So you need to be really, really, really knowledgeable
Yeah.
or get some really good advice on that in your lease.
Morning, TK.
Pete, how are you, mate?
I'm fantastic. Thank
That's
you.
right. How's the weekend?
It was good. Yeah, good. Yeah, really good actually. Had
Watch
some good
Wallabies?
food. Didn't watch the Wallabies. I'm sort of off rugby.
They got up.
I heard.
It's very rare.
Well, that's why I was off them. So that's generally what happens if I don't watch. It's like when I used to follow the Reds religiously for probably 10, 12 years. And they went from winning everything to losing everything. And then I stopped watching again and they started winning. So I feel like it's me.
Potentially. Can you not watch anymore?
Yeah, exactly. So all my Kiwi friends definitely don't want me not watching when there's a game on. But you, good weekend, mate?
Good, mate. Yeah, good.
Today we're going to do something a little bit different. Thought we're going to, I think...
Welcome to our humble abode.
Yeah, exactly. Slight venue change for those that are playing at home. If you haven't noticed, we're not in the dark. We're in somewhere light and bright. Where are we?
Market Bistro.
In the PDR, the private dining room at Market
Maroochydore
Bistro.
Central.
So Corey's going to have some fun editing the sounds out of this. There's probably going to be some lovely kitchen sounds in the background, but we're going to share a meal. And it's something we're going to sort of do on a regular basis, where we share a meal with ourselves and also with some other people. We talk often about breaking bread with people and how much more you can get out of a conversation when you're sharing a meal as opposed to just, all right, tell me about this. And I think it's really important that people sort of see that. So hence the reason we're doing this, which is going to be fun. And we've chosen here because we've got some space, first up.
We don't have to answer to anybody.
No, exactly. Corey has some time to sort of set up without being rushed. And I think, the other thing is the food's bloody great here, always has been. So, we're slightly biased, you probably more than me, but,
Oh, mate, there's a bit of your DNA floating around in here, that's for sure.
that sounds horrendous, but sure.
Well, you were part of the team from the get-go. You were standing here, mate, when it was a concrete shell.
I certainly was. I remember.
And what did you say when you walked in?
Fuck. I think
Are you mad?
I think the first time we walked in here, when I came in here with you and Luke, it was. I'm going to say it was probably 2 months before open. It was a while to go, and when I walked in, I was like, "This is just not happening." And it's interesting because I've been involved in I don't know, maybe a dozen restaurant opens now, and each time you get to that stage, you're like, "This isn't going to open. We're never going to get there," and it looks
It
like
never
it's
changes.
so far away. And then there's this flurry of activity in the last couple of months or 6 weeks where everyone starts putting the pedal down and, builders are like, shit, we're on a timeline now, we're going to go. Yeah. And you get here people 24 hours a day and, the lights come up and the weekends they're here. And But yeah, it was frightening when I first walked in here because the other thing was there was no other buildings here.
No. There was no worse place for a restaurant to open in Australia.
You could not have possibly picked a worse place. I think at that time when there was nothing, you knew that there was other buildings coming, which meant you're going to have construction sites on every single corner it's been, 4 years now, and they're still building across the road and will continue in other blocks, I suppose. But what we wanted to talk about today, and I think it's really important because a lot of people do have this conversation after a 30 beers or a glass of wine or something not alcoholic, and it's generally at a party or at a barbecue or something like that. Someone's like, you should really open a restaurant. Like, you're really good at this, or you're
I've
great.
watched all the shows.
Yeah, or whatever it may be. And look, that can work. It has. But what do you say to someone who, if you were a fly on the wall in that situation, there's a group of 10 people sitting around about to rip in and spend $100,000 each and open a restaurant, let's say, for $1 million, what do you say to them?
Apart from don't?
Yes. Yes. The next step after don't. And we do, and I think it's important that we acknowledge that. It's not don't as in don't because it's going to suck, or don't because you're going to hate it, or don't because you're going to lose money. It's don't because it's hard.
Yeah. It's hard, and I guess the restaurant industry, food and beverage, is unregulated. So you don't need a degree. You don't need literally. You could leave school, and if you got the cabbage, you could open a restaurant.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons so many go arse up. Because people often think just because they go out for dinner a few times a week or lunch a couple of times a week that they're a restaurant critic or a connoisseur, and they don't realise that there's a raft of shit that goes on in the background.
Yeah.
And I think I know, and I can only speak on behalf of the industry that I know really well, which is hospitality. There's so much money that comes in and so much money that goes out. There's so much to manage in between that, from when the dollar hits the till to when it leaves again, that if you're not razor sharp and all over that, then things can go pretty pear-shaped really quickly.
So is that the skill? Is basically, retaining dollars? Is it like, making sure that you know what your yield is?
Yeah, I think I learnt the hard way. The very first restaurant that I ever opened with some very good friends of mine, it never made a penny, and I did it with Melissa purely for passion. We loved the wine bar in Maroochydore, which was just down the road, and we did it purely to try and create the best restaurant on the Sunshine Coast. And that restaurant has created legacy here, and often people talk about it. It was 10 years. It was a member of the coast, but to make any money out of it, if you're doing it for a business, which for me now, I'm unemotional. If it doesn't make any money, we'll shut it down.
Yeah.
But if you want to do it to create income and to make a business out of it, it's a simple game of mathematics.
Yeah.
And if you get it wrong, it will flog you to death.
Yeah.
Quickly.
Really
quickly.
Yeah.
Like saltwater fish and chip shop cost us $70,000 in 4 months.
Yeah.
And I feel as though I do this pretty well. But it's tough. It's really hard.
Yeah.
And we have a few key rules that we never break.
Yeah.
And it starts from the moment we come up with an idea. We just got to workshop it.
Okay, so let's talk about those rules, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I think, again, if you're in that situation, you've sort of said to someone, hey, you know how hard it is. You sort of explain to them, no, this is not going to be easy. And they go, yep, we know that. We get it. Then what's the next step? And I think a lot of people, I've spoken about this before, but I mean, it's all about sight.
Yeah.
Right? It has to be.
Well, I suppose I'll go back one step further. If you've never been in the industry before, I would go out there and look for a good restaurant that's trading well, that's got some proven books that have been signed off by an accountant. And there's a few really easy questions you can ask to make sure that the old ad backs that go into P&Ls these days.
Yeah. Like what sort of thing? What are the things that you look out for in that situation?
Well, I always look at labour, because the first thing that will always get added back into a P&L is labour. Just make sure that you have a good look at how much, if you're looking at a P&L for a restaurant that's across a 12-month period, just take a look and go, well, a decent head chef's, you're going to get paid $100,000. A decent restaurant manager's probably going to get paid between $80,000 and $100,000. And then there's a couple of staff either side of that. If they're trading 7 days, you're looking, if the restaurant doesn't have $500,000 to $700,000 worth of labour in that line item across a 12-month period, then
something's wrong.
Something's wrong.
Okay.
And the other thing, like marketing and different bits and pieces, always gets added back into the P&L just to make that bottom line look healthy.
Better.
Now, really, the only thing that should be added back into a P&L is when you've spent money that has potentially been optional.
Yeah.
So,
like what sort of thing?
Well, marketing's probably a key one. Like if we did an outside broadcast with a radio station, it's $5,000. That'll sit in this month's P&L. So if I'm looking at a P&L for another restaurant that I may be looking to buy, I'll go, well, why is January's
spike?
And they should be able to drag it out and say it was an outside broadcast.
Sure.
But and there's an argument to have that you add that back into the P&L.
Sure.
So because they didn't need to do it.
Yeah.
But the big one for me is making sure that the rent's right, the labour component's
What's
right.
What's right mean? What is right?
Well,
percentage-wise?
First of all, if an accountant signs off on it, then you can pretty much guarantee that
It's legit.
those figures are legit because they can get themselves into a fair bit of shit by not doing that.
Yep.
The other thing you can do is go and sit in the venue if it's trading, which it should be if they're chasing some significant cabbage for it.
Yeah.
Go and sit in there and have a look and go, well, the business is for sale for, let's call it $500,000. You know, that realistically, in my experience, a restaurant that is trading under management. So if it was your restaurant and you're selling it, how much are you working in the business?
Yeah.
And if you're not physically working in the venue, then you could probably get a 3 to 4 times multiplier from the net profit. So if the net profits say $150,000 a year, then you could get a 3 or 4 times yield on that.
Yep.
And then when they send you the books, and you've got a full copy of a P&L there, you can sort of see, okay, well, look at the month that you're currently in and just go and sit in the venue and go, well, it doesn't really, like, you
Doesn't
can
feel
it. You know, go on a Monday, go on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Like, I would dine in there 7 days. If I was spending $500,000 on a restaurant.
So this is if you're going to buy one, right? An operating concern.
Yeah, and if you haven't done it before, that's exactly what I'd do.
Yeah.
Because building it's fraught with danger. Like,
Okay,
there's
so
so many other things.
You're saying if you haven't opened a restaurant before, don't build one and start from scratch.
If you're inexperienced in the hospitality industry,
Right.
and you haven't done it before, you haven't opened a restaurant before, then I would have a look. There's plenty of good restaurants for sale that are making decent money.
And do you think, I think there's that conversation, I spoke to someone last week about this as well, is that, you know, there's a difference between owning a restaurant that you're not going to work in.
Yep.
Obviously, it's quite a significant difference. And people sort of say, oh, you know, I'm buying it, and certain people in hospitality get to a point where they want something smaller that they can manage with less staff. It's just them.
Yep.
And you're almost I said to someone, you're buying yourself a job.
Yeah.
Is what you're doing. And there's benefits to that potentially as well for certain people if you just want to, you know, maybe work 4 days a week and just keep it really tight. And it's a smaller venue with everything is lower. The costs are lower.
Yep.
You know, the pressure's probably a little bit lower. And there's nothing wrong with that,
No.
I think. But I think a lot of people will go, we want everything. You know,
Yep.
we don't want to be in the middle.
Yep.
We want to own everything. We want to have 20 restaurants. We want to, you know, da-da-da-da. It's like there's a couple of steps along the way. And I think that a lot of people, you know, you speak to these days, there's groups of which, you know, you've got one, where they sort of seem to be doing something really, really well. Mm-hmm. And often that is system related as well. So sitting in that restaurant when someone's looking to buy it for the first time, what should they be looking for apart from just, is it busy or not? Like, what are the next things?
It's all about, well, whatever the restaurant's for sale for, you've got to make sure that you're getting some value for that money. So if the restaurant's, say, for sale for $500,000, you want to make sure that you're getting $500,000 worth of value out of it. One, the restaurant's going to need to be making some money. Then when you do a walkthrough, have a good look at the equipment. Make sure that if there's anything that's leased, make sure all that documentation's up front, so you just know exactly what you're getting yourself in for.
Is there someone that, like, you know, again, let's say I have no idea. I've just woken up on a Sunday morning and gone, you know what, that was a great idea. We're going to do this. I don't know if something's leased or not. I don't know what equipment looks like. I don't even know what a deep fryer is. You know, is there someone that they can get? Is there somewhere?
There's plenty of consultants out there.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and
so you can get help with that kind of
course,
stuff. Right.
Of course you can. And I wouldn't go. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, I guess, that there's consultants and then there's consultants, and a good one's expensive.
Yeah.
But you get what you pay for,
Sure.
and just put it into perspective about the amount of money you're going to spend.
Yeah.
So if a consultant costs you 5, 10, 15 grand and you're spending $500,000, then it's kind of relative.
Yeah.
If you're getting a consultant for $500 who's never opened their own restaurant before, I'd start questioning that, you know what I mean? 'Cause there's a lot of Muppets out there as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pretenders out there who are consultants who've never owned their own business. And that's the thing that always baffles me. Like, it shocks me the amount of people that have a consultant business card who've never done it for themselves.
Yeah. So they've never had it on the line.
It's pretty fucking easy to spend somebody else's money. But when it's your own,
Different
then
conversation.
just have a look at have they got any runs on the board? What have they done? Who have they consulted to before? Maybe even reach out to them and have a yarn to them and just say, oh, if Peter Marchant's a consultant, you know, how was he?
Yeah.
You know, so I'd go into that. And
He was awesome.
Don't take it lightly, and also don't be in a real rush. just take your time and make sure that you dot your I's and cross your T's, because the process is long, and if you end up buying a restaurant, then you want some longevity out of it.
Okay, let's keep going with that scenario. So it's 500 grand. We've gone through, we've looked at the books, we've gone, you know what, it looks pretty tidy. Everything sort of seems to match up. We like what these people are doing.
Yep.
It's maybe it's managed, maybe it's not. How much more do I need apart from the 500 for the actual cost, which is, let's say that includes stock, that sales. So basically you're buying the business, the name, and the stock that's there, and that's pretty much it. It's up to you then check if the equipment's actually yours or if it's the landlord's or whatever. How much more do I need? What's the runway I need for cash flow? It's a big question.
Yeah, it's such a big question, and I've done the polar opposite to what I'm about to say as well, and it's stupid, right? And if you want a story, I can give you the story, but you want to have access to 100 or a couple of hundred grand,
20, 30%, 40% more than the actual.
Yeah, and maybe just have it available. Like, you don't need that in liquid cash in the bank.
The line of credit or.
Yeah. You need to be. That doesn't involve ringing mum and dad and asking them for it, but you need to be able to access it really quickly, and whether or not that is through a bank or a bank account, then that's kind of where I try and educate people around it. You just need access to that.
To some more.
Yeah.
And what for? Like, what are the things that straight up you go, fuck, we need an extra 10 or 20 or whatever it may be?
Well, mate, like, it's so simple to go, well, I mean, you did it with the bottle shop here. You think you're going to need X amount of stock, and then suddenly you need Y, and you think that that's only a few extra bottles, and suddenly it's $20,000.
Yeah.
Or you do a menu and you realise instead of one deep fry, you need 2 deep fries. Or there's just little bits and pieces like that along the way. But the big one is to make sure that you can open and hold your labour fairly high for a few weeks, just to make sure that that you're providing really good service and people are getting looked after. If it's an ongoing concern and you're buying a fully set up restaurant, you shouldn't have that too many dramas unless you've brought porky pies.
There's problems.
And what you've brought is a fizzer.
Yeah.
So, but also have a look at the time of year it is. It should, when you buy a business, it'll be very clear in the P&L, your quiet months. Have a real good look at that, and that should tell you if you're buying it in the first week of winter when you're going to take it over, you might want to have a few extra bucks in the bank because you may need that.
So use the information that you get from that P&L to plan.
Yeah, because the P&L is just a historical record of their trade.
Is 1 year enough?
I just don't know. If you're selling a business after a year, there's probably a question mark around that as well.
That's the thing. There could be two things to that. You could be like, oh my God, this thing's amazing, but it's not working for me.
But most restaurants that I know that have sold in the first 12 months have clearly been one or two. One is it's a pig and it's hemorrhaging money.
Yeah.
And the person selling it's just trying to recoup a proportion of whatever they've dumped into it.
Yeah, sure.
Which is probably the most common way.
Yep.
The other way is like our friend Terry Gallacher, who he opened 2 restaurants side by side, and in the first week back in the Paddington days, somebody walked in and said, "I love this restaurant, can I buy it off you?" And he picked a number out of his ass, and they went, "Fucking no problem."
And they brought it. That is the exception rather than the rule.
Never happens, but
says probably
good on him.
More to do with Terry than it does with anything else. But I think that's one of those things where that's all stuff that people need to know. In terms of how long you've been trading. What's the credit history like? Are there things like that you can check somehow that you sort of go, they are paying their bills on time? Do you speak to the suppliers?
Well, the P&L should tell you all that, and when it's signed off by an accountant, it sort of just adds a element of validity, I guess, to it.
Security that it's actually real.
Yeah, but for somebody like me, it'd need to be an exceptionally good business for me to buy it, because where's the value? And I don't mean this with any arrogance. It sounds very arrogant, but we build brands. That's what we do.
Yeah. That's
why there's not 2 Rice Boys. It's not why there's 2 Market Bistros. There's not like we're about creating something unique.
Yeah. It's not a McDonald's. It's not a Jim's Mowing.
And I reckon this is just my philosophy. It's really important for our group because all of our key leaders are really creative. So if we're going to open, like my old business, Worldwide Hospitality Group, we had junk, and we just cut and pasted junks.
Yeah.
And we had several trading,
which can work as well. Obviously does.
Absolutely, but for us, we thought, we can have an Asian restaurant like Rice Boy, and we can create other Asian restaurants with Rice Boy's DNA, but make it a bit more different, make it a bit fun, maybe leverage more towards Japanese than Chinese than Thai, and what it does is it creates some real creative energy with all the chefs, and I think that's really important.
Obviously, yeah, definitely. And in terms of growth, it's almost necessary, because if you're in one lane and one lane only, it's like, what do you do if there's a crash on the highway?
But it's bloody hard, mate, because I can tell you now that I've opened brand new restaurants before, a few of them, and you can usually tell in the first couple of months if it's going to be easy or it's going to be hard or it's going to be a fail. And it takes time, and it's hard, and people need to. You know what Market Bistro's like. We've been here for a few years now, and it's now becoming that place where people trust it. So I always go, if you're advertising for Melbourne Cup Day, New Year's Eve, Valentine's Day, do you have a great business? Probably not, because if you're doing a great job, then you'll have a team of people, you'll have a raft of people that all they want to do is celebrate in your venue. In those key days are always really important.
So they should be filled organically,
I reckon. I don't think, I can't remember the last time, apart from our social media, just letting our valued customers know what we're doing, what the offer is. We're not out there trying to fill seats.
And I think that, and there's nothing wrong with trying to fill seats either, just to be clear. And I think that, a lot of people, you'll see that, we've got a couple of seats left. And if someone's generally posting on social media saying, I have a couple of seats left, it probably means you've got a shit ton more than what you want. But that's interesting. So basically you want it to be full before you have to worry about it.
Well, and that sort of just tells you that you've cemented yourself in the neighbourhood, right? So we always wanted to be that local trusted neighbourhood bistro that's got really good food. It's not super expensive, great wine list, a place where you can get, an entry-level glass of wine, and then you can get something that's going to, spin your wheels.
Do half a lobster and some foie gras and everything else if you want to. So.
But there's nothing wrong. My advice, and this is the advice that I live and die by, if you've never been in the hospitality industry, have a good look. Clearly, you've probably been in business before, I would hope. Get out there and have a look. Go and speak to a couple of good brokers. There's plenty of really good hospitality businesses that are for sale. That is certainly the safest option, than trying to create something yourself. But if you're trying to create something for yourself and you want to create your own restaurant from a blank canvas, and you might have a chef or a restaurant manager you want to back into it, then there's some things that I always live and die by, and I've got a very simple spreadsheet which I can show you. I feel like I've made it in life now, because I get my computer out like
it's not a competition, but
kind of is. I think mine's bigger than yours.
It's not about size, mate. I think
it's not about the size of the nail, it's the size of the hammer that drives it.
That's going to get cut out for his sake. I think it's probably best. What was that? That's the hook. It's not about the size of the nail. Okay, so let's say I've had the idea, I want to do it myself. I want to start from scratch. What's the first thing I need to do?
So what I usually do is I go, workshop a product. So if you want to do a steakhouse, if you want to do a bistro, want to do a seafood restaurant, have a good look out there, see what competition's out there, see who's doing it really, really well in your area, and work out if there is a market.
So that was going to be my next question, because a lot of people, I've had someone, this is a few years ago now, they're like, it's like, do you know that there's no one here doing choripans? And it's like, yeah, I did know that. Why would you? I mean, and I don't mean that as like, choripans are delicious, don't get me wrong, but God, who knows what they are? How are you going to sell them? How are you going to market them? Is there a market for that in the area? So I think that's really important, is in terms of in the area. So, if you've got a lot of whatever people from, I think what's the word? Socio-economic. Demographics, all that stuff, which I can't even think at the moment, but all of those things, they need to be thought of, because it's like, just because you come up with the greatest hot dog ever.
But people come in and go, there's no seafood restaurants around, so we've got to open a seafood restaurant. There's such a gap in the market for a seafood restaurant. But what you've got to understand is a piece of fish is fucking expensive.
And
So
it goes off real quick.
So if you go, I need to buy a piece of fish for, call it $30 a kilo.
Yep.
Then I've got to sell that piece of fish for $90 a kilo, which probably equates to $45,
$45
$50 at main course. Is the people in the area going to spend that money?
Yeah.
Now, there's going to be areas in every single suburb around Australia that you'd go, fucking no way.
Yeah.
You know, like all my family's from Western Sydney, Penrith, Windsor. You know, you'd never open a top-end seafood restaurant out there because they're filled with proper blue-collar workers out there.
Yeah.
I'd open a steakhouse. I'd probably open a burger joint. Because that pointy end of town, you need to be super careful when you target that. And it's funny how restaurants are one of those things that everybody always wants it as fancy as possible. Get the fanciest wine glasses and
Who, the owners, you mean?
yeah,
Or-
like, but, and 99% of the time, it's the people that have never been in the industry. They want to go in there and they really want to fucking stamp their mark. And
Yeah.
you watch this, and that's your market is shrunk so
Yeah,
significantly
quickly, yeah.
because you know that pointy end of the market it's a shallow pool.
So what do you do? Oh my God, sorry, there's just a smell that
I
just
know.
came
What
wafting
is it?
across here that is unbelievable. Jesus, it smells like caramelized onion or something
Yeah.
ridiculous.
It just wafted.
This may have
know,
been a
it's
very bad idea. I had to order the entire menu. I'm sorry, just that was really distracting, that smell. Good thing to have in a restaurant, I suppose, when it's a positive smell.
It's either that or fresh bread.
Yeah,
It's a good one too.
Something's really good. Yeah, didn't realize it was a Bunnings snag being cooked back over here. So
How fucking good are
that
Bunnings
smell,
snags?
man, that smell. It's just something about it. It was like, I was there recently. Like, how many would you like? It's like, how many can I carry, champ? When you've got the little holder in your car,
Yeah.
that's
We've
that's too
always
much,
felt
so.
like fat bastards walking out of the Bunnings car park on a Sunday.
I'm taking them home for my family.
Yeah.
12 of them. Yeah, I think that the idea of going fancy, like you said, and someone going, no, we're going to commit to this and everything else.
Yeah.
I think that goes back to your point of like, what's everyone else doing? And
Yeah.
there may be a reason for that. And it's not, yes, you can always do something different for the sake of being different,
Yep.
but it's got to make sense. And so if you've decided that you're not going to use that $4 piece of glassware on the table, you're going to use a $25 glassware
Yep.
on the table. Why?
Yeah.
There has to be layers to it. And it's also understanding that $25 glass potentially could break 5 times more than the other one. So there's a reason why people use toughened glass, hardened glass in certain styles of venues, because they're just going to smash.
And there's another element to it as well. You look at our plates here. We have primarily 2 types of plates:
Yep.
a flat plate and a coupe bowl.
Yeah.
And people don't realise they're $30 each. And
Yeah.
that's one stack. There's a shitload
Yeah.
more. Like, the reason why we have them is for exactly what you said. They're rounded edges. They're tough.
Yeah.
A lot of people go, well, I'll just go to IKEA or Kmart and buy plates. But what you need to realise is they'll go through the dishwasher twice and they'll be in
They're
pieces.
done, exactly.
So-
And they also get belted. Like, it's not like you're having your dinner on that one
No.
plate once a day.
No.
That plate could be in a restaurant 7, 8, 10 times in a service.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it goes out, gets washed, goes back out again, gets washed, goes back out again.
Yep.
That's lunch. Right, let's do dinner.
And once you've got a concept, right, like just say you want to open a seafood restaurant, or a steakhouse is probably good. Or I can give you, why don't I run through what I did for here?
Yep.
Because this is a good one, and you will relate because you were there for the ride.
Yeah.
Is Luke Stringer, who came to us and said, I want to open a restaurant. I want to open a local neighbourhood bistro. So we workshopped a concept and we thought, well, why don't we do a local neighbourhood bistro that also had a general licence that had a bottle shop attached to it.
Yeah.
And this restaurant in particular, I was really nervous about it because I didn't think that pointy end of town, that sort of upper market restaurant, I didn't think the Sunshine Coast was in a place that was going to really grab hold of it and run with it. So I was nervous about that. So
But you still proceeded.
yeah, because I just thought the thing that will save it, if it's a slow start and a slow burn, the lease and the rent needs to be reflective of that.
Okay.
So when we went to the market and we just looked around all over the Sunshine Coast, I had a good friend of ours is a property developer who'd brought stage 1 of the Maroochydore CBD, and that's where the restaurant is now. So if you back yourself and you're the first in there on the ground, you're going to get the best deals, right?
Okay.
So because you're wearing all the risk.
But there is a lot of risk in that as well.
Yeah, and I wouldn't advise anybody off the street to do that. I just knew we had the chef, we had the restaurant manager, we had you for the bottle shop, then there was me, and I'm like, worst case scenario, I think we can make enough of a fuss for people to want to come and try it once.
Try it once, yeah.
Now, I knew that the Maroochydore CBD is a growing area, and I did a lot of research and knew that these big buildings that were going to get built, the deals were done, and well, there's no question mark over it.
They were coming.
They were coming.
Right. So it wasn't like it was a standalone building and nothing else is happening around it at all.
No.
It was always going to have something else.
So we knew that City Hall, where all the mayors and the councillors are, I knew that was signed. I knew that there was going to be a 4-star hotel across the road.
Yep.
I knew that we're going to be next to another very impressive office block.
Yep.
And I knew that there was going to be a private hospital across the road. So, and then all the gaps were going to be filled with units.
Yep.
So I'm like, it might be a slow burn at the start, but within 10 years, there's going to be a shitload of people here.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things. I'm like, well, maybe. And I knew that being the first on deck here, the deal was going to be real good.
Yeah.
So once we all met here and we've gone, this could really work. The space was pretty cool. Then that's when we started negotiating with the landlord. But there was a few key drivers that I'll look at, and that is the rent. What is the rent? Because once you sign that lease, you're fucked.
You're locked, yeah.
So I always laugh at people if their restaurant's gone arse up and they jump on social media and say, landlord put my rent up exponentially. They can only do that at the end of the term.
Yeah.
Right.
So a lot of, and let's talk about leases just really quickly. So generally hospitality leases are either 5 + 5 + 5 or 10 + 10, or depending on what it might be. Sometimes it's 3 × 3 × 3.
Yep.
So that means that after each one of those periods, you can have a conversation with your landlord as to whether or not you're going to continue or not, right?
Yep.
So you've got the option to pull out or keep going.
Correct.
That's the only time in a lease where the landlord can increase the rent.
There's things called rent reviews.
Right.
Which most leases have rent review periods. Could be after 5 years, could be after 3, could be after year 1.
Mm-hmm.
Some leases have it every year. There's a rent review. Most leases will have rent increase yearly.
Yep.
It's either CPI or it may be a lot of leases are just saying 5% now because CPI is fucked.
Yep.
So it's
just so they know exactly what the number is.
Yeah. So I always look at that and I go, well, let's just say the rent is. I've got a great spreadsheet. Can I show you?
Yeah.
So we live and die by this, and it helps us not be emotional about it.
Okay.
Because
which is really easy said. It's really easy to say and very hard to do.
Yep. So I might spin this around. Can you see that, Corey?
We'll pull this up. Yeah.
Okay.
So Corey's going to put it in here.
Yep. Perfect. So if you type in that top line there and that top cell
and the annual rent.
Yep.
I'm going to put in there. Well, let's
say
100
grand.
100 grand. Is that kind of normal? What does that look like? What kind of a shop am I going to get for that size wise?
Well, not much.
Okay.
But if you can you can have a look at what we do here. Punch in 300 and see what it looks like.
Okay, let's do 100.
It'll make your hair stand on end.
So, and the thing is as well, what people need to be aware of. So normally, again, I'm not saying anyone that knows this, but from a rental perspective, you're looking at a cost per square metre, right? So generally, if you've got a 100 square metre venue, that means you're paying...
It's about 700 a square metre here.
Okay.
At the wharf, it's about 700.
Yep.
On the front esplanade of Mooloolaba,
Yep.
which is, I could throw a tennis ball there from the wharf.
Yeah.
It can be as high as $3,000 a square metre.
Now, and I remember way back in the day, the most expensive rent per square metre in Australia, I believe, don't quote me on this, was in Noosa.
Hastings Street.
On Hastings Street, and it was the Sunglass Hut.
It could still be that. The tendency, the smaller it gets, the rate per square metre will go up.
Right.
The bigger, the less it is.
Okay.
But it'll still be, if you're in an expensive area, it's
just going to be high.
And you need to justify that. Why?
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, because there's no way Sunglass Hut is making the money. They're not selling that many pairs of sunglasses. I would imagine. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But for me, then it's like, okay, this is clearly a marketing and it's a positioning thing. They need to be there.
But you need to know that when you sign that lease,
yeah,
the only place that rent's going
is up. Right.
Every fucking year, forever.
Yeah.
Until you're done with the lease.
That's a sure thing. That's not going to change.
Correct.
Okay, so we've plugged this in here. We've got 100 grand annual rent.
Yep.
So then you come down and it says turnover. So basically this is what it needs to be?
So I might have a few landlords that will want to kill me over this, but for me, I say 8% of your turnover
Right.
is what your rent should be.
And I think that the old school is probably 10. Roughly, if you're around that, if it starts getting above double figures, then it's like that's.
I just don't know how.
Yeah. Okay.
Only because your labour back in the day was 30%,
and that's maybe the thing. That's just not the case anymore. So, all right. So we've got a turnover number, which makes that at $8,000. So that takes it to So turnover.
So here you've got at $100,000 a year.
Yep.
Your annual turnover needs to be 1.25 million.
Okay.
Then from there, that's a weekly turnover of 24 grand.
Yep.
A daily turnover of 3.5. I'm using round numbers here. And then it goes into breaking down further. Now, we have a column in here that shows you a split between food and beverage.
Okay.
An average restaurant, say Rice Boy.
Yep.
I think Rice Boy's.
I think Rice Boy's
70-30. I know, but I don't know.
I think it's normally about 60-40. That's kind of what it.
Yep.
Normally, which is what's on here as well, right?
Yeah, but here sometimes it can be 50-50
because the booze sales are up.
Top end booze sales, right?
Yeah.
So, but the big one here that I always go down to, and that is that we break it down into daily turnover, lunch and dinner.
Okay, so you break down into two services.
Yeah, so it says here on $100,000, you need to be doing $2,500 a service. So when you go into a vacant shell while you're negotiating with the landlord and before you sign a lease, stand in the site and go, I reckon I'm going to be able to get 20 seats, 50 seats, 100 seats in here.
Yep.
Then work out how much money do you think each customer is going to spend? And then go, can I do on a Monday in the middle of winter $2,500? And if the answer is no, abort.
Walk away straight away. And that's just with purely math.
Yep.
And you smell again. Jesus. There's a different smell. I think that breaking down, because again, I remember years ago, if you look at that budget and this kind of, then you break it down into, depending on the venue as well, you might have breakfast in there as well. That's going to add just costs rather than
drive your labour
it's
right up.
Hard to make money in breakfast. But you can break it down. Let's say there's 21 services a week. It's like, which ones are we going to be open, and how do we get to that number that's going to make us money? And then you can go back, as I said, the next step of, right, if you're standing in the venue, can we do 100 people? Are they going to do $25 a head?
Yep.
Maybe not. We're a cafe. It's probably not going to get to that number, so it's going to be this. So then we need X, Y, Z. So it's just a matter of filling in the blanks.
Yep.
And I remember going back to that, breaking it down even down to a line item in terms of a sale, and going, okay, so how many coffees do we need to do that? How many muffins do we need to do to make that? How is that going to work? And again, if it does, then absolutely awesome. If it doesn't, then cut and run.
A good friend of mine was looking at a sushi restaurant and asked to sit down and grab a coffee with me and just ask me a few questions, and they were getting sort of not pushed into a site, but a site that was right near a shopping centre was flagged as a great site for a sushi joint, and it was takeaway sushi, but the rent was $100,000 a year. Now I looked at that.
Sushi rolls.
Well, then this is what I said. I said, well, what's your average check for a sushi restaurant? We went down and it was like $7 or $8.
Maybe $10.
And I'm like, can you do 100 people an hour?
An hour.
Yeah. And they went, absolutely no chance. I'm like, put a line through it. And they're like, but I'm like, stop. Now you're trying to convince yourself. That's pure maths.
Yeah.
And next year you're going to need to do 4% more than that.
Yeah.
And then the year after, 4% more than that.
Yeah.
So suddenly...
And that 4%, that's only just to cover rent, that increase.
That's CPI.
Yeah.
And then if you get a rent review because you're doing really well, it could be 10%.
So... speaking about doing really well, what are your thoughts on peppered rent, where someone pays a low base rent and then pays a percentage of rent to the landlord? Because that's quite common and used to happen a lot more.
Percentage of turnover.
Percentage of turnover, exactly, yeah. So,
this is a tough one to explain if you're not in the industry. But so a turnover rent should always have what they call a threshold in there. So you can have, say, if the landlord wanted $100,000 a year rent for here, then you might say, well, let's do a base rent of $60,000 and you can have a percentage of turnover. Mm-hmm. Then he will want that threshold to be non-existent. So he might turn around and say, I'll take 5% of your turnover on top of the
base,
the lease.
Yeah.
what I suggest is drive that threshold up to, call it $1 million. So then you pay 5% of
everything.
every dollar over that $1 million, just so you've got a bit of breathing room.
So that way you know that everything's paid, everything's covered, and then you can start paying the extra because that's all cream.
Because if it blows up and it goes really well, you could find yourself paying $500,000 a year in rent.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you have a threshold that's high enough, there's a bit of protection.
Is there...
And you want the landlord to be able to make some money as well.
Of course, yeah.
And you want to make some money. It needs to be a cohesive marriage.
Yeah.
Now, I'm really lucky in the venues that I've got now that currently, fingers crossed, it keeps like that. But we've got good landlords. And if I'm looking at signing a lease, I want to know who that landlord is. Often you're just dealing with an agent, but I want to know who it is.
Who that person
Are they a
is.
big corporate company? Are they publicly listed? Are they a mum and dad?
Yeah.
Are they a local business guy? Can I get in front of them?
Yeah.
Can I talk to them?
Yeah.
Because I want to know if the shit hits the fan and you're my landlord, you're willing to sit down and have a coffee with me,
Yeah.
and we'll figure it out.
And I think, a lot of that became pretty relevant sort of 4 years ago when everyone was like, shit, I can't pay rent at all. What do we do? And, some of the faceless landlords, so to speak, they just cut and run or, just went, well, get out, whatever it may be. And others didn't. And, you see now that a lot of those restaurants that did sort of go help at that point in time have survived.
Yep.
Because of, an understanding. It's like, well, if you're not making money, I'm not making money. Do I want an empty restaurant? Do I want an empty venue?
Yep.
No landlord wants that. They want someone in the venue paying rent. Simple as that. So I find that percentage of turnover rent really interesting because, yeah, you're right. It can go. You can be paying huge numbers in rent, but it's all relative as well. So it's like if everything's sort of capped, and like in terms, sorry, not capped, if everything's taken care of and then everyone's just making money past a certain point, is that a positive thing?
I know a venue that has just signed a lease and their rent is about 150 grand a year, and they're also taking, it might be in the realms of 8% of their turnover with no threshold. So for every dollar that goes in the till, they get 8% of that on top of
top of the rent already.
And I can't help but go, oh my God.
Which, I mean, in theory, could work if it's a seriously high volume venue, right? But at 150 grand base,
then you could be paying $500,000 a year. Your rent could be 20% of your turnover. And a lot of airports, I know that the local airport here, they were looking at a turnover lease of 20% of the turnover is the rent. And I sit back and I go, I can't make that work.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think a lot of people could.
No.
That's a lot of sushi. But, I mean, these businesses exist in the airports. Yep. I remember years ago dealing with Brisbane Airport and trying to sell to them, and I was selling wine wholesale, and it was hard.
Yeah.
Because they knew what they had as well. They've got a captured market. So they can just sit there and, they would price wine based on LUC. So the wholesale cost per bottle, that's how they would sell it. That's by the glass cost.
Yep.
So if it cost me $10 a bottle, then I'm going to charge you $10 a glass. And it's like, well, that's an interesting way of doing it, but sure. When you can, and no one's pushing back.
That's right. Yeah. It's such a different market, that airport market.
I mean,
but for me, there's the rent side of it, because once you sign that lease, that you're said and done. But also, if you can't afford a decent lawyer to look at it, you can't afford to open a restaurant.
Yeah.
Because you need an exit strategy as well. What happens if?
Yeah.
And then that's going to cost you.
And I think we should probably talk about exit strategy more, maybe a little bit later on. But is rent the most important thing?
In many aspects,
because that sort of incorporates site, I suppose, as well.
Yeah.
It's all the same.
It's just one of those fixed expenses once you sign the lease that's not going away.
Yeah.
It won't be. It used to be your biggest expense, where labour is your biggest expense by far now.
Yeah. So I mean, really, we're talking about, like you said, if you're trying to keep things at 8% for rent, labour, I mean, standard probably these days is what, 33, 34, 35 maybe.
35,
depending on
north
the venue.
of it.
God, I remember working somewhere once, and the labour percentage every week was something like 63%. It's like, why are we here?
Yeah.
It's like, we shouldn't be sitting around the table talking. We should be all walking away.
Yeah.
Surprising that venue didn't work. Not my fault, but it is. It's like, it's understanding those numbers. Like, yeah, you can look at a number, but then you got to do something about it.
Yeah, that's right.
And rent is something you can't do anything about.
No.
It's done. So then it's like, okay, then what else do we do? Okay, so let's say we found a site.
Yep.
We think the concept we've got is going to work in
Yep.
the area that we're in. We've got a landlord that seems pretty open to negotiation. We've worked out this is what the rent is going to be. What about things like contribution to fit out?
Yep.
So what does that mean?
The landlord should always give you some money to open.
Like cash
or
up front, like here we go, or is it discounts, or
if you're not a reputable operator, they'll probably want to give it to you in rent-free period, which
Okay.
is not altogether bad either.
Yep.
But
as long as you do the math on what happens when that kicks in.
yeah, exactly. Because the fit out incentive, they call it. Fit out incentive is a direct multiplier of the rent.
Yeah.
So if you need more and you want a fit out that, you know, in some respects, a landlord will pay for the entire fit out.
Yeah.
But your rent's going to be super
So
expensive.
you're still paying for that somewhere, like
Absolutely, just
and
not
then,
up front.
Then they own the fit out.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Or do
depends
they?
what it says in the lease.
Okay.
So I asked for a significant fit out incentive only because I'm a reputable operator. And I'm like, if you want me to come in here,
Yeah.
it's going to cost you.
Yeah.
Now I'm commercial about it because I also know they'll give me what I want, but I'm going to pay for it
At some point in time.
in the rent. And I want to make money for the entire term of the lease.
Yeah.
You know,
Not
so
just for the first 6 months.
yeah, or you know, like I don't want to get blown up with the rent, and if I
Yeah.
can't afford to open it, I won't open it. And we don't use bank funding, so unless we got the money, we won't open a venue. So
Yeah.
there's things like fit out incentive, which depending on how what your track record's like, it
Yeah.
can be up to 20%, but normally it's around
20% of the yearly rent.
20% of the total rent.
Total
so
rent,
if you've got a 10-year lease, it's $100,000 a year. That means that
$1 million
you've signed a lease that's got the value of $1 million over 10 years. So the fit out incentive, if 10% is $100,000.
Yeah.
So the landlord should cut you a check equivalent to 10% or $100,000.
Which can be in a rent-free period or a stepped rent where it increases over
be
time.
Correct. It could be
Equipment.
some cash
Yeah.
and some rent free.
Yeah.
But you've got to be careful because I've been flogged like this before as well. When they give you that money and they just transfer it straight in your bank account, well, that's income
So you're then paying GST on it. So you're
and
losing.
tax.
Oh, right. Excellent.
Yep.
Okay.
What I ask for now with my fit out incentives is that they pay my suppliers directly. So if you're a shop fitter, then you might send me an invoice for $30,000 worth of cabinetry, but I'll get you to make that invoice out to the landlord.
Yeah.
So then I don't have to. It's not classed as income then.
Yeah, because it's not going through your business at all.
No,
so,
correct.
Okay.
You know,
Alright.
so it can be
That's totally legal.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
But what you need to do is making sure that in your lease that it's clear that the fit out is yours. Now, as
Yeah.
far as I'm concerned, anything that you can remove from the venue is mine.
Okay.
I can't take the range hood.
No. Even though it cost $100,000. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. But
The air conditioning or
the fit out incentive for me, in my head, I justify that because I go, well, the landlord gave me a couple of $100,000, so
Yeah. He can keep that.
the benches,
Yeah.
the walls, the nib walls,
Things that
blah, blah, blah,
stay, yeah.
the light fittings.
Yeah.
But some people in their lease will have a make good
good,
clause,
yeah.
which means you need to get it back to the way you found it.
Which, and I'm just thinking about this venue, to make good here.
It would cost more than what
I
it
was going to
costs to
say,
build.
it's just ridiculous. And it's,
Millions.
yeah. It'd be
Millions.
way too much money to
That's
actually
before
think
you
about.
start talking about grease traps or
Yeah.
like, fuck. So you need to be really, really, really knowledgeable
Yeah.
or get some really good advice on that in your lease. Things like personal guarantees.
For suppliers?
No,
legit-
for
or for
the landlord, because if it goes ass up, he's giving you a few $100,000, he's going to hammer you.
Yeah,
well,
of
he
course.
should hammer you. But if you don't have a personal guarantee in there, he can't chase you for that money.
Yeah.
But you might need to pay an extra month worth of bond or
To
security
get that
deposit.
removed or-
You're always going to need some in there because that's just some protection for the landlord. But I would always encourage people to pay an extra month bond
Yeah.
or an extra month security deposit in lieu of a personal guarantee.
Okay.
Because that'll keep your house, your car, all your personal assets safe if it goes to custody.
They can't go after it.
Correct.
Okay, so
I've learnt the hard way.
yeah, we've got a site, we've got a landlord. Lisa's happy, where everyone's good. Who's next? What's next?
Well, with your concept, I always make sure my people are first.
Okay.
Restaurant manager, head chef. If you don't have those people, I wouldn't have even taken that next step.
Okay.
And I suppose my theory around it is skin in the game.
If you can, they have skin in the game.
Yeah. Well, give it to them. Give them a share.
So sweat equity.
Yeah. Or sweat equity, meaning you've got to earn out the money that it takes. Well, just give it to them.
Yeah.
Because if your chef's going to work for something other than a paycheck, you've got him for life.
Yeah, so it's the golden handcuffs, I think,
But some people don't want that stress. You didn't want it. We wanted it to you.
Yeah.
And full respect for that. Like, I look at that and I go, some people go, oh, is he fucking mad? But I'm like...
I still think I am some days, but that's okay.
But that's, mate, that's my theory. Yeah. And I have a lot of other business people who think I'm mad giving away equity.
Yeah. But I also think, if the model works for you, then why would you not do it? That's
it's
the
just
thing.
proven to work for
Absolutely.
me.
And I think it's not just you. There's others that have done a very similar thing. But there's also people who be like, I don't want, there's the
risk
control.
Yeah.
And also control. It's like, I'm not giving anything up. It's like, well, again, you can structure it in a way where the control mightn't be there, but the ownership is.
Yeah.
But again, it's that someone feeling like they own something.
Yeah,
that's more than a lot. If you can make someone feel like they've got ownership, and that doesn't have to necessarily be a number.
Yeah.
And certainly for someone like for myself, I do 100% work the same way regardless if I do or don't have ownership. That's probably a fault of my own, but and
that's why I was really comfortable in the fact that it wasn't a make or break deal for us when you said no.
Yeah.
It's like, respect, but I do also know, I've known you for a long time, so I know you'll treat my dollar like it come out of your pocket.
100%.
But there's a lot of people out there that don't do that.
Of course, yeah.
In particular in kitchens, I watch the way the actions of chefs change when they need a new oven and the oven's 10 grand and you got 10%, give me $1,000.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck.
Yeah.
Suddenly I don't need that new oven anymore.
Oven's fine.
Yeah.
We'll do it with this. It's no problems at all. And is that's, I suppose, one of those things that some people just don't understand. It's like, I just get 10% of everything. It's like, hang on a second. It does work both ways. So if there's a cost involved,
10% of the risk, you get 10% of the reward.
Right. And I think that some people just assume that it's basically not that at all. So
we've got some food coming.
Do we? Oh, hi. Fantastic. What was that lunch special? It sounded pretty good. It was like some kind of beef braised
ragu.
beef with some kind of pasta, was it? Or
Orecchiette.
I do like orecchiette. Yeah, I think I'm going to get the special. It sounds good.
That was easy.
Yeah, well, it's that kind of a day. So,
where we're at,
I can't remember.
Buying a restaurant. One of the things you want to do is just make sure that personal guarantees. A lot of decent landlords now know that the personal guarantee is kind of not worth the paper it's written on because it costs a lot of money to chase somebody for money.
And if they have nothing, that's the other thing.
And if you're ass up, you're ass up.
Yeah,
right?
you are.
So
0 minus 0 is still 0.
So landlord, and often a decent landlord will just put all their energy into trying to find a new tenant.
Right.
But
which makes sense, I suppose, as well. So, with regards to exit strategy, let's talk about that now for a second. Or should we? No, let's come back to that. I still want to talk more about the next steps, I suppose.
Yeah.
So we've got we've got the concept, we like it, we think it's amazing. Our 3 friends told us the same thing, so we're like, we're going hard on it. We found and that's not to have a dig at someone who may have an idea. We found the site, we've got a lease, we're happy with that. We've got a good lawyer, we've got a good accountant, 2 critical parts to the equation.
Absolutely.
And then we've found a chef that we like, that we've done reference checks on. We've spoken to previous employers and employees. I think it's a really important point. Just made up words. Important part of reference checking, particularly when you're going. If you're going to give equity as well, you need to check up and down. So it's all good and well for someone who reports really well to the owners, but they may treat everyone else underneath them or that works with them like shit. So it's like, you don't want that as well. So I think it's important to try and find somehow, and it's not easy, but try and find out, what these people are like. Hello. Hi. Tony?
I'm going to have, please, the tagliatelle with mud crab if I can. I'll grab an entree size.
I'm going to have the lunch special, the orecchiette with the beef, because it just sounds
fantastic.
like the right thing for lunch today. All right, so what are we doing? Okay, so we're sorted by state here again. So again, I'll try and work out in my mind. I'll try and work out the wine list in terms of how it's laid out, because that's going to have an impact as well. I won't get super technical on why there's something in here that I don't like, but that's okay. That's just me. It's not about assessing this wine list, is it? Corey, can you hand me a red pen, please? Doesn't matter what it is. We've all got personal likes and dislikes, right? And that's the thing. Like the one thing, and I hate this. I just hate it when I look at a list, and there's no offense to obviously to anyone. Listing it
They were
by
delicious. Where were they from?
they were fantastic.
Franklin Harbour, South Australia.
South Australians know how to oyster.
They do.
Is the listing at price point wise from lowest to most expensive, because what that does is for me straight away, I'm like, well, I don't want to be a dickhead, and it's like I don't want to go into the second cheapest wine list conversation. If anyone's got 5 seconds, Google second cheapest wine and just watch that sort of little skit. It's very, very funny, but that will push people more towards that.
Yeah, right.
Whereas if it's all sort of jumbled up, then I'm not ordering by price point. I'm looking at the left-hand column more. I'm more interested in either where it's from, the producer, or the vintage. And if you're getting someone purely on the right-hand column, they're probably going to stay at the higher end of that column. I'd be interested to see, from a sales perspective, if you wanted to break this down, what the biggest selling wines in that, even breaking that down. Like, okay, we're looking at Victorian Pinot here. Between the $55 to $300 Pinots that are on this list, what's the biggest seller?
Yeah.
I guarantee, I could almost tell you right now, it's going to be the $70 one.
But do you think it would have been the $70 one before, in your way as well?
No.
Really?
Yeah, because it doesn't pigeonhole. No, I don't think so. Because it's so obvious now that the second cheapest is $70.
I'm going to circle back on that next week.
Yeah.
I'll make a note.
Sorry, Damo. But again, everyone's different. In certain venues, it can work like this because you're pushing people down maybe as well. But most people are going to go up. They're going to go to the least, not least expensive. It's always the second least expensive. But they will head around that area. The other thing is, if I only want to drink Victorian Pinot, then that's my options. Whereas if I put all the Pinot together, I can see that it's different regions, but it's not going to pigeonhole me super quickly.
One of the things we find here at Michael Bistro Bar, which is quite unique, and that is if you are $100, if your budget is $100,
yep,
you're probably going to the bottle shop.
Okay.
Because
the concept here is you can go next door, get a bottle, pay $20 corkage, bring it back in.
Here, but you drink it for retail price.
Right.
So a $100 bottle in the bottle shop
is actually going to translate to a $300 bottle. Yeah.
So people, if they're in that topper echelon of price bracket, they see great value in going next door.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you're a $30 or $40 bottle, $50 bottle,
but there's no value in going next door and buying a $40 bottle and putting $20 on. It's like
the corkage comes into play hard.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's what I would say to people. It's just like there's a threshold. Like there's a point where it doesn't make sense.
Yep.
And there's a point where it does make a hell of a lot of sense. And as soon as I think it's probably around that 80 to 90 mark. I think you're right. As soon as you do that, it's like, holy shit, this is great value for money. We're drinking that wine at that price point in a great venue with good food.
Yeah.
And that's kind of that was the whole point.
Great.
Yeah, I know what I'm going to drink. I wonder if you've had this. Have you had the Main Divide? North Canterbury?
No.
It's just fun because then you can say North Canterbury. You don't have to though. Okay, so
there's the grab.
Let's continue. I don't actually ever use that. I'm going to ask that not to be used. But it is funny because whenever you see North Canterbury on a wine list, that's the first thing I think of is that song. So anyway. Who was it? Scribe, that's right, yeah. I remember being in North Canterbury and maybe having a couple of beverages and that got used way too much. I'm pretty sure we're in a venue. I'm thinking about it. There may have even been, I don't think there was karaoke, but it may have been like almost like we can choose the music kind of situation. I feel like it was almost like just put that on repeat for the rest of the night and just watch everyone hate you. Okay, so we've got a venue. We've got a chef. We've got them locked in, as in they want to commit. They've got to share, let's say 10%. What's next? What's the next thing we do once we've got?
I'll tell you another tricky one. It's not a tricky one, but it's a mathematical equation that I think we got good for some wine.
Yes, please. Can we have a bottle of the Main Divide Pinot Noir?
How good's food when you're starving?
Oh my God. There's something about, and it's cold and wet and rainy outside. Well, as much as it's going to be for the Sunshine Coast, and I've just had this dish put down on me, which has created you some significant
Massive
food
food
envy. I'm not sorry about that either.
Give my grab all of that.
I need someone probably to give me a hand with this.
I want to tell you another little trick, all right? That
Go
I've
for it.
learned when I'm looking at restaurant sites, because the number one thing that, kind of not the number one thing, but one thing I get asked all the time is, how much will it cost to fit this restaurant out?
Right.
And it's such an open question, right? Because you can buy a chair worth $50,
Yep.
or the chairs you're sitting on now
Yep.
are worth $550. So, general rule of thumb, and it usually works pretty bloody well, is a restaurant that's never been a restaurant before. So a blank
Canvas.
canvas is usually about $2,500 per square meter
To fit it out.
Yeah. So if your restaurant is, let's see how. So if your restaurant is 200 square meters,
Yep.
which is probably average, and you spend $2,500 per square meter to fit it out,
It's 500.
it's $500,000.
Yeah.
Generally, that's the ballpark.
So, again, is that money I've got to have in the bank?
Well, you need access to it. Well, it depends on your fit out incentive as well.
Yep.
But the things that the landlord, I believe, and again, this is just my opinion, the landlord needs to spend money on things that you cannot take with you.
Like what? Obviously, we
Range
talked about the range
hood
hood and
grease trap.
grease traps.
Making sure that you've got enough power coming into the venue. Making sure that you've got enough grease trap. Because
For the size of the venue.
correct. So
But there's at the end of the day, there's that's code, like that's building code. It's got to be a certain size, and each state's different as well. So you got to be making sure that everything's like all of those things.
for the love of Christ, don't get your brother or your mother or your father to fit it all out for you. Because things like range hoods and grease traps, as you just said, there's a code that needs to be followed, and it's not something you can just do.
Right, paint
So-
it. You can paint it yourself.
Yeah,
There's things
100%.
like that you can do.
Painting, tiling, all that sort of stuff. But
What if you're a tradie?
well, if you trade, it's a different story. You just need to know the law. That's all. And it's not what you think you know, but you just need to know
What you
the
actually?
law.
Can we just talk about that wine for a second? I know it's not exactly helpful.
what is it?
This is the main divide. So this is Pinot Noir.
Where's it from?
It's from North Canterbury, New Zealand.
Isn't
And
there a song?
there is, yeah, apparently.
okay.
We probably don't have the rights to play it, unfortunately. So that's going to cost
That's
too much
bloody
money.
nice.
It's delicious. What I love about this, so this is a second brand of Pegasus Bay, and
Why did you choose that?
the
today?
Donaldson family. Well, I love the family. First and foremost, these people have been making wine there for a long time. The wines are always really technically sound wines, but
Pegasus has been around for a long time, right?
yeah, and I think the thing for me, North Canterbury is it's a harsh part of the world to grow grapes. It's
Whereabouts is it?
it's Christchurch.
Oh, yeah.
And there's some amazing wineries there. And what I love, they've got a really tight knit community as well, and they all sort of get along. They promote the region very well together, and it's there's a consistency to these wines that I really like. It's also just ticking all of the boxes from a Pinot Noir perspective. So yes, you've got that sort of that gaminess, you've got that bright red fruit, but there's some layers to it. It's not just simple.
No, it's
and
not cordial.
No, exactly. And there's again, time and a place. There's plenty of times we just want to smash a glass of light giggle juice. This is kind of that step up from there, and then you go to Peg Bay, it's another step up in terms of complexity and everything else. But this in terms of it's not an everyday drinker, but it's not far off.
Right.
And it's just bloody delicious. So
Wow.
anyway, just to bring that in.
I probably wouldn't even guess that was a New Zealand Pinot. But I'm a novice, but it doesn't taste like a New Zealand Pinot to me.
Yeah.
It's
I think
really nice.
I think that's a really interesting point, because this is a North Canterbury Pinot.
Yeah.
Like, it's not New Zealand.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, again, we simplify things like, oh, that's a Kiwi Pinot or whatever it may be, or Barossa Shiraz or South Australian Shiraz, whatever. And it's like, but is it? Because even if we say South Australian Shiraz, there's a big difference between like Riverland fruit, between Barossa fruit, Clare Valley fruit. I always used to love the WA thing as well, which is always hilarious, because I love wines from WA. I'm like, from where? Because there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kilometres between Swan Valley and Geograph. But brand WA did really well,
Yeah.
particularly in the mid-90s, kind of just being great value. So everyone that got into wine at that point in time just remembers that.
Yep.
I think it's a positive thing. So, sorry, I digress. Let's come back to that.
That's
Okay,
right.
so
So $2,500
$2,500 a square meter just for
gives
fit out.
you a decent guide.
What's in the fit out? What does that include? Is that everything I'm going to need? Pots, pans.
So long as your landlord's providing things that you can't take with you.
Okay.
Range hood, grease trap, also power to a point, grease trap to a point. So you're not gonna need access to those things because you won't be able to trade a food venue without them.
Without them, right? Because it's got to get signed off before you start making anything.
Correct. You'll need to get the health department to come through, and there's a big code with that. So I would advise to go to a good shop fitter
Yep.
and just Google it. I can tell you the guys that we use, that if they're a reputable equipment guy, if they're a reputable shop fitter, they'll be able to guide you through the process as well.
Sure. So that's a lot of trust to give someone that you don't know.
Yeah, but I also think that when you sign a contract with a builder or a shop fitter, you could also make mention they need to follow that all the way up until the day that you get signed off.
Okay.
So then you put a little bit of onus on them.
Sure. So it's like, okay, we you'll get paid when we can do what we need to do.
Or there might be 3 different payments. There's a payment to start, payment in the middle, and payment at the end.
Okay, we've got the numbers. We know what we've got to spend on fit out. How much do we need in the bank when we open the door for the first week? I know it's a big question in terms of like what kind of venue it is and everything else. But again,
At the bare minimum, you want to have your wages in the bank.
for the week or for a
Yeah.
month or for how
I
long?
would probably say a month, but it's very hard. You're going to have trade, but we do things a little bit differently as well. Some people go, I'm going to open quietly so we can iron out all of the kinks.
Yep.
Where we open with them as
With a
much
bang.
noise as we can.
Yeah.
But I suppose where it's different for us is we've usually got some really skilled people behind it. So that way, when we're doing our pre-opening marketing, we're trying to create the sizzle. We
Right.
want people going, when is this joint opening?
Yeah.
Enough already. We just need it now. But you can minimise your bookings as well. So
Yep.
you're creating the sizzle, but you're also not slaughtering yourself.
So if we've got 100 seats, you only maybe operate with 60 to start with, or 70,
Operate 40,
yeah.
then 50,
And
then
then build
60,
up.
then 70. Because as I've said in the previous podcast, I've certainly, like piggyback, we fucked it up. Just being
Because
too
it
aggressive.
was too many people too quickly.
We just bit off more than what we can chew. We never in a million years thought we'd do as many people as what we did.
That's a weird problem to have, but it's kind of like, surely that's a good problem.
It is, but as you're the same as me, you're forgiving to a certain extent. But when you've waited in line for an hour and then you wait for your food for an hour,
Yeah.
you're
gotta be.
probably not that forgiving.
No. And that's the thing. If it's not amazing, then be like, well, that's a first and last
We're
sort of time
we're
there.
very fortunate that we managed to get them back.
Yeah.
But it took a long
Took a
time.
while.
But we had to shut after 3 days out there just to reset
I
ourselves.
remember that. That was in the first week, wasn't it? Or catch up, basically get your prep.
Did we do that snippet? Yeah, bloodbath.
I remember you posted a video on socials going, hey, sorry, but we have to shut because we've run out of everything.
Yep.
Like you had no food. It was a Sunday and you had no food at all.
Mitch, Eliza, and myself were in tears.
I mean, that, again, it's kind of a good problem to have, but like sometimes you will only get that one opportunity for someone. And so they're there on that Sunday, like, what do you mean we can't eat? It's like, oh, they're never going back to that place. And then
I often say you'll never get a second chance to open a venue.
yeah,
That's it.
and the ripple effect from that can be huge as well,
Yeah,
right?
Of course, it can break you.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of restaurants that trade 6 months, not even, and then they're shut 3 months.
You mentioned marketing. How much is enough, and what do you do? Like,
It's so critical.
and because these days, obviously, social media is massive. Everyone's go, oh, we'll just use socials. We'll just use. It's like,
And you don't need to spend a fortune on it, but you need the presence. And you need to create cut through. You need to create that sizzle. You want people waiting with expectations.
on the next post or
Yeah, and that's hard because when you've got nothing to shoot and you don't have a kitchen, but introduce them to yourself. Introduce the public to your team. Introduce them to the food. Cook it from
Yep.
home. Get the chef over to your house and
Yep.
cook up a couple of dishes.
yeah,
That's fun.
And then it's that it's that ABC always be contenting kind of
Yep.
thing. It's like you've got to have that because you can't post it.
Once
if you
you
don't have
open, it's critical. And the amount of people that come to me wanting help, and the first thing I do is jump on their socials and realise that they post a couple of times a month, and when I say to them, you should be posting daily, if not every second day at the bare minimum, they're like, I don't have the time to do that. It's just as important as setting the restaurant.
Yeah. It's mise en place, right?
Absolutely.
And I think the other thing is it doesn't mean you have to do it.
No.
Because there's plenty of people out there.
Get your staff to do it.
Yeah. Or
you
get someone
walking around with a phone in their pocket.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
Hire a professional.
Or hire someone to do
if
it.
you don't have any money, do it yourself.
Yeah. But, I think that there is a lot to be said from getting professional images and professional video done.
Yeah.
Because it just sets you apart instantly.
Anything to add, Corey?
Corey's going to put his website address in here. But it is. I mean, I think it does make a big difference between a photo that's been taken by someone who knows how to lighting and everything else, and can then do something in post production to remove that flare that's there or whatever it may be. Whereas, and it also depends on the venue
and entertainment. People want to be entertained, and if you look at Red Bull's marketing, you'd be hard pressed to try and find a can of Red Bull in any of their
just
marketing.
branding on everything, right?
It's trying to tell. They're selling a story.
Yeah.
And it's entertainment. And I look at that and I go, we need to do more of that.
More entertainment?
I think we just need to keep it in perspective. We're selling food and we'd like people to see the food, but also people like to see the chefs cooking. They like to see the wine getting opened. They're
selling the experience.
Yeah. One of the biggest posts we've ever done is me walking around a venue. It had nothing to do with the food or anything like that.
Just showing people around.
And some of the videos that we're starting to do now where we're introducing our staff and asking, personal questions, what's your favourite food and where do you like to go for dinner? And
there's that connection there straight away, and there's that, we crave community, I think, these days, and I think we've mentioned it before, and I think I'll continue to mention it until the end of time. Community means so much to people, and that can be that online community as well. It can be your socials, it can be your followers, it can be whatever it may be, but we crave that connection in some way, and we crave a real connection as well.
Yep.
Just choking on a bay leaf, excuse me. But I think that connection to real people makes a difference. It's not this massive corporate identity. There's actually that. There's a person there. It's like, oh, we know her. She looks after us when we go in the venue. That's X, Y, Z. And I think that's important. And people then, that starts a conversation. It's like, oh, we saw you on there and da-da-da-da. So
start the story early. Like, look at your website, your Instagram handles, your Facebook handles, your TikTok handles.
Yep.
And
that's really good advice. So get those early, like, before you've done anything else.
Sell the sizzle, and that's your job.
Yeah.
Because when you open a restaurant, you're in sales now.
Yeah.
Get in there and really drive that home.
Yeah.
And sell that story. I think it's so super important because people find it fascinating and people love that.
Yeah. I agree 100%.
I know Corey's mentioned to me before that he wants to, when we do a venue, he wants to follow a day in the life of me opening a restaurant. But
Jesus,
I know that could be a bit stressful.
Yeah, that's probably a sensor's nightmare. That would be a lot of filming and a lot of editing. Probably 10 times as much editing that it would be filming.
Duck and weave.
Yeah, exactly right.
Weave.
But I think also there is those interactions that happen closer to the venue opening as well with suppliers, and they can be high stress for everyone. It's big dollars, so everyone's, and particularly there's an investment that's been made from them as well, but so they care about their product, and you're like, well, I don't really like that. Well, that's what was designed, and then you go from there, and then you get an architect in the mix as well, and it's tough, and it's like juggling cats. I think at that end bit, it's like so hard to do, but it's such a critical part as well, because you can blow out budgets in the last week of an opening quicker than you can say or do anything else in this world.
Because all that matters is opening.
Correct.
And then suddenly you've dusted
we've got to get open. It's like, do we? Maybe we are better opening 3 days later or 2 days later, whatever it may be. Yes, there's an opportunity cost to that, but it means we're going to have the fryer commission. We're going to have the sign off. We're going to have, all of those things. If we have to do it, you have to do it. Like you said, it's like remove the ego from it.
Yep.
And it's like, no, we're going to be better off waiting a week.
Yep. Yeah. And I always say, hold off on the launch date.
Yeah.
Until you,
in terms of telling people.
Yeah. And just create that sizzle. And when you're a week away.
Yeah.
Then open your reservation book up and aim for that week when you know that it's not at jeopardy.
Yeah. I think the the week we opened here, I think we were probably a couple of days early, and in terms of there was an event from the builder.
Yeah.
They had their
builder's
builder's Christmas party.
Which for me, it's like, we've got to take that because that's so much pepper on the tail.
It's very
of
important.
The staff.
It's very important.
Yeah.
But it was like, I'm sorry, when?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, so we're officially not opening till then, but we're going to do this.
Shout out to Evans Build who built it. But
And also pressure on them because it's like, well, you can have your Christmas party here, but you got to finish it.
I don't know, with the foreman that was here, and he was like, he kept telling me, I don't know whether we're going to hit the date. I'm like, oh, no worries. I'll just get Mr. Evans' number.
Yeah.
Would you like it? You just ring him up and tell him you're not going to have the event. Here you go. And he'd be like,
So it got done though,
got
basically.
done.
So.
Yeah, we got it done.
Okay, so what else? Is there anything else that we need to know? Or the people?
Your people are
need to know?
everything.
People, as in your staff, your team. Mm-hmm.
So you need to hire your leaders very early on the piece, and then really create a brand of what you want to be famous for. What do you want to be famous for? What do you want this venue to be famous for?
And then lean into that with everything.
I can tell you all the venues that we have, there's a persona and there's something we want to be famous for.
As in the venue has its own persona?
Yeah. Like Rice Boy, for example, every single piece of marketing for us is targeted at 18 to 30-year-old females, and we want to sell more beer and more dumplings or curry. Dumplings and curry and beer, that's what we want to be famous for.
Yep.
Giddy Geisha was fried chicken, sandos, and cocktails. Market Bistro, wine and steak.
Yep.
You know, so, and then every single decision you make, leverage it off that.
Should be.
Yeah. Are we doing what we said we want to do? Is it going to make us famous for that?
Yeah.
Because you can't be everything to everybody. You
Yeah.
can't. The thing that just kills me is when people go, oh, maybe we're a fine dining restaurant, or we're a cafe during the day, or we're a fine dining restaurant at night, or a fine dining restaurant, but maybe we should do coffee and cake in the afternoon to get that afternoon trade. It's like, don't do coffee if you don't want to be famous for it.
Yeah.
Like we do coffee here, but we don't market it as for people who want to have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee after dinner.
Yeah.
We don't even have a coffee machine at any of the Asian restaurants.
Yeah.
Not even RBs. You know, so we want to be famous for dumplings and curry and beer.
I think there's...
Let the people who do coffee and do it really well.
Absolutely. And I think that there's that idea of what happens in that situation. I think we may have talked about this before as well, is that the venue will end up having a personality disorder because it doesn't know what it is. You know, if the owner's sitting there going, oh no, we're going to do this and this and this and this and this. It's like, hang on. Just maybe let's pick one or two and be, like you said, be very good at those, as opposed to we're going to try and please everyone. Because we've all been to those cafes, restaurants that have a menu that's 17 pages long, and you're like, what? We've got omelettes next to crepes, next to steak, next to seafood, and it's like, I don't know what I'm going to order here because I don't know what they're about.
Yeah. So you want to be famous for something, so people go, have you come here and had the
had that XYZ?
You know,
yeah, exactly.
I totally agree.
Have you had the duck tortellini at market? Yeah.
For me, it's so important. It's everything at Boca was pointed at pizza and pasta. That's what we want to be famous for.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, that makes sense. It's an Italian restaurant. They're the things that make sense. So it's like, let's just go for that. So we've made all those decisions. We know what we're doing. We've got a rough idea what we're doing. The money, it all stacks up. We're going to lean into these 2 or 3 things.
Yep.
Is there any final sort of departing words you would say to someone who's thinking about getting in?
I would never ever open a restaurant for passive income, because I get that all the time.
Passive income.
Passive income
in a
which
restaurant.
Means you get paid for not doing anything. And
God,
you know,
is that even possible?
I haven't seen it. Yeah, you can be a shareholder.
Yeah.
And you can get passive income, but
someone's working in it.
Yeah, and 99.9% of the time, you are legitimately going to be working in there. And if you're not working in it, you're working on it.
Yeah.
And you just got to be prepared to roll your sleeves up and have a proper go.
Yeah.
Like the one thing that I always say when people ask me, why do we have... Currently, we've got more wins in the win column than losses in the losses column. And people think that's the Midas touch. And if you want to really fucking piss me off, tell me that. Because it's not the Midas touch. It's... I'll just work harder than you.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to do that. And I know that my wife, my family, my business partners are all wired that same way.
Yeah.
We won't lose due to lack of hard work. And I think that 99% of the time, if you take that mentality with you,
Yeah.
you'll win
Yeah.
because nothing will ever beat hard work.
Yeah.
And I'll just beat you to death with it. I'll just get up earlier or I'll go to bed later. And if I've got to do it myself, I'll do it myself.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of that. It's actually a motivator for me. I like that chase.
Yeah.
I find it exciting. And,
Yeah.
so they're the things. You just got to be prepared to do that. And if you're not, because you've got another job or, you've got a young family at home and you're not willing to work on the weekends or you don't want to work at night, don't do it. But if you're willing to throw everything at it and have a proper crack at it, anybody can do it. You've just got to follow a few of those basic steps and make sure that you're laser focused on what you want the outcome to be.
Mm-hmm.
And, who knows, you might have some fun doing it because I couldn't imagine me doing anything else because I love it. It's a great industry.
Absolutely.
It's a bunch of fun.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, and I know that we've spoken about this before, is that it has to be fun.
Yeah.
And it's not about, there's a difference between fun and loose as well. Like you can still be having fun and keeping everything in check. It's not about, fun doesn't mean, getting boozed all the time or, even, this is work, obviously, so this is, doesn't count. But I
You don't think a few of these young fellas here are looking
they hate us.
We're going, I'm going to open a restaurant because TK gets to sit down and drink wine and eat chips on it.
Yeah, exactly.
They realise there's 30 years of fucking brutality sitting behind me.
What's we were saying when we spoke to Colin Fasnich, it's like, I think I remember said to him, it's like, oh, you're an overnight sensation, 25 years in the making.
That's true.
People don't always understand what it's taken to get someone to a certain spot. So some great advice in there. Hopefully some tidbits that some people will listen to if they want to. How's
that pasta?
The pasta's delicious. I'm going to stop the cameras and we're going to eat this. And I'm going to feel great about myself. So here's cheers.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks. Cheers, Corey.
James, Corey.